In this video, we're going to be looking at how acids behave with carbonates or hydrogen carbonates. Hydrogen carbonates are sometimes called bicarbonates. So let's start with an acid and a carbonate reaction. So in this particular case, you have here a metal carbonate, and it's been put in a solution of an acid, and you can see that there are bubbles being formed, and those bubbles being formed are from carbon dioxide gas. So the general reaction is acid plus metal carbonate gives salt plus water plus CO2. And they will generally follow this type of reaction. And it's a type of neutralization reaction because a carbonate is a base. So let's do an example. Hydrochloric acid plus calcium carbonate will give us salt, which is always the hardest part to find. Water because it's neutralizing, and carbon dioxide gas. So the salt must have been calcium chloride. So now what we'll try and do is write an equation. So hydrochloric acid, HCl aqueous, plus calcium carbonate. Now it hasn't told us it's in solution or anything. So calcium carbonate being an ionic compound, which is a solid at room temperature, will give us calcium chloride. Now remember, don't even look at the reactants. You have to go to normal ionic process. Calcium ions are 2+, chloride ions are negative. So put the formula together. Plus water plus carbon dioxide gas, CO2. Now what we need to do is we need to balance. And I can see balance 1 calcium, 1 calcium. There's 1 chlorine here, but there's 2 on the product side, so I'm going to put a 2 in front. Then balance your carbons, 1 carbon, 1 carbon, hydrogen, 2 hydrogen, 2 hydrogen, 3 oxygen, 1 plus 2 is 3. Next, we're going to be looking at our state symbols. So, calcium chloride. So the chlorides are here in the soluble in water table. And you can see that calcium is not an exception, so it is aqueous. Water is a liquid and carbon dioxide is a gas. Now, if we wanted to write observations, we're going to have to look up what colour the compounds of calcium carbonate and calcium chloride are. So calcium carbonate is not in the colours of selected substance table. It's not in the coloured ions, so it must be a white solid. And calcium chloride, which is in solution, there's no calcium ions here, so it must be a colourless solution. So our overall observations would be, this is a colourless solution, this is a white solid, colourless solution, colourless liquid. Carbon dioxide gas is a colourless, odourless gas. So our observations are a white solid dissolves or disappears, to give a colourless solution and bubbles of a colourless, odourless gas. Now let's look at acid and metal hydrogen carbonates or metal bicarbonate. Once again, The metal hydrogen carbonate is a base, so it's a type of neutralization reaction. Acid plus metal hydrogen carbonate gives salt plus water plus CO2. So let's try this one. The water and the carbon dioxide are easy to work out. So that just leaves the salt. So the salt must be a metal and a non-metal grouping. So the metal would be the sodium and the non-metal grouping from sulfuric acid would be the sulfate. So you say to yourself the salt's name is sodium sulfate, and then using valence, right, you would write the correct formula. So let's have a go. Sulfuric acid, H2SO4, H2SO4, and it would be aqueous, plus sodium hydrogen carbonate. Now it hasn't told us it's in solution, so it would be a solid. Will give us sodium sulfate, use ionics to do it, plus water, plus CO2. Now our next stage is we need to balance. So I've got 2 sodiums on the product side. I've only got 1 on the reactant side, so I'm going to put a 2 down. I've got 1 sulfate on both sides. Then carbon, hydrogen and oxygen you balance alphabetically. 2 carbon, put a 2 here. 2 hydrogens plus 2 hydrogens is 4, put a 2 there, and 2 3s is 6 oxygens, 2 plus 4 is 6. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work out their state symbols. So sodium sulfate, I find sulfates. Most sulfates are soluble, and that includes sodium sulfate. So that would be aqueous, water is a liquid, and CO2 is a gas. Observations. Sodium hydrogen carbonate being a solid. I check my colours of selected substances, it's not there. I check my coloured ions in aqueous solution, it's not there, so it's a white solid. And sodium sulfate, check in solution, check my coloured ions in aqueous solution is a colourless solution. So now I can write an observation. So, colourless solution, a white solid, a colourless solution, a colourless liquid, and a colourless odorless gas. So our observation would be a white solid dissolves or disappears, to give a colourless solution and bubbles